Hello, and welcome to Cannabis, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tori Rarick. Each episode will feature a candid conversation about how the cannabis plant has positively impacted individuals' wellness and bliss. Here to honor the plant and have fun. Hi, everyone. Today we're speaking with Melanie Rodgers, creator of Influential X and founder of the Americans for Safe Access Colorado chapter. And Melanie, I'll just let you tell us a bit about yourself and what you're up to.
Hi, thanks, Tori. Thanks so much for having me on your podcast. I'm very excited to talk about cannabis and a little bit more about my background and what I plan on doing moving forward. So a little bit about me. I, as you said, am the founder of Influential X. And what that is after being in the cannabis industry for, let's say, working in it since 2015 and actually being very involved locally here in Denver in 2009, I've seen that I feel like the biggest and the most rewarding contribution that I can make is to really help with education, advocacy, and social responsibility. Those are just three areas of focus that Influential X has in the type of work that we do. So Influential X, we are the producer and co-creator of influential experiences that are rooted in education, advocacy, and social responsibility within the cannabis and hemp space. So that is a little bit about what I do. And, I'll definitely, give some background on how I got here, but that's a little bit about Influential X and then about Safe Access Colorado. So yes, we are a newly formed chapter of Americans for Safe Access. Americans for Safe Access is the largest member organization that has been advocating for medical marijuana patients and the therapeutic use and research for medical cannabis. So they are headquartered in D.C., in Washington, D.C., and they've been around since 2002. So I can, definitely, as we chat more, give some background on how that came to be, being that we're a newly formed chapter in Colorado, which is definitely one of the first states to go, completely legal. So yeah, again, just really happy to be on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I just knew I had to have you on. I met you at my very first normal meeting and you were up in front talking about Americans for Safe Access. And as coming from my pharmacy background, anything that I can do to empower a community and support them and be in the know, I had to have you on.
And thanks for coming to that lobby day because we were able to connect there too as well.
Yes.
And we put on a lobby day at the Capitol.
I want to talk more about that for sure.
Okay.
So I like to rewind before we get to now because I'm just curious to know what your first encounter with cannabis was like.
My very first encounter?
Yeah,
Sure.
I feel that there is a stigma for a lot of us and then some event happens that it turns. So
sure. So I'll talk about both because my first one, I was definitely consuming cannabis with friends. I think I was I tried it, I think my senior year of high school, and I actually didn't feel anything. I wasn't sure if it worked. And then I kind of gave it no thought. And really it was actually in college, being far away from home and kind of I lived in a very conservative household, being very religious Catholic and then going to Catholic school. So it was like, they say once you're kind of sheltered, you go to the furthest away college that you can and you just let loose. And I'm totally, that is totally part of my story. So for me, really dating back to cannabis use and it was actually pretty therapeutic. It was managing, some of my stress, but, then I didn't really see it that way. It actually took years later for me to understand the medicinal benefits and why, it actually was good for me. And I was able to kind of, cope with life things and some trauma. And I was able to kind of use cannabis in a more therapeutic way, if you will, rather than just, it's Friday night and we're all hanging out and partaking, if you will, like, recreationally. And then, so I, became involved in 2009 as a cannabis patient. I was actually one of the very early on involved in the underground cannabis community, or just the medical cannabis community. This is before where there was maybe a number of shops opening, medical dispensaries just began to open. There was one made, some of them don't exist anymore, but in 2009-10, we had an influx of, now doctors' offices, actual retail shops here in Denver. And I was very lucky. I have to give a shout out to my husband, who worked for a major newspaper here in Denver, and he was one of the first ones to advertise, to allow this new industry an actual opportunity to advertise their businesses, advertise the doctor's office,
wow,
advertise the medical marijuana dispensary. So I'd like to talk to you about, the beginning of my advocacy, where I really kind of stepped out, and it was at this event called the Ganja Ball. And it was, I think, 2011 or 12, where there was a industry event. And at the time, this was medical only. Rec wasn't around. So it was really for medical patients. And there was an organization back in the day called Cannabis Business Alliance. But they brought in a man named Irvin Rosenfield, and I had a really amazing conversation with him, and I got to learn much more about him. He is one of the last two remaining federal medical marijuana patients.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It was a program in the 80s, and he has this rare bone tumor disorder where tumors would grow out of his bones, and it would sometimes erupt, arteries or come out of his skin, and it was very painful. And it was the time where there was the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, and there was a program where they were experimenting with all sorts of drugs to help the AIDS epidemic. So within this program, maybe 20 people, a lot of them AIDS patients, they had one, MS patient, and then Irvin. And he was, the brain tumor patient. And it was just this, and they gave them, and he showed me this in person, a prescription of joints. So he showed me he pulls out of his jacket a Ziploc bag of joints, and on it says federal medical marijuana patient, or his name,
Wow.
how many times a day or whatever. And he shows me this, and I'm just like, oh my God, like mind blown. My mouth is probably open. I'm just like,
Totally.
whoa. And he's telling me a story of how he's in this program, but it helped him so much that after he started, he never had an outburst tumor again. He never had a tumor. They weren't growing anymore. And he was actually able to help him. And so he showed me his federal prescription. And that really kind of was like, what? There's federal patients. This happened. Like, the government knows. And so that was kind of one big aha moment for me, where I was like, oh my gosh, like, again, like I would say I'm a truth seeker. I'm always like seeking the truth. And that's where I was like, wow, we've been lied to. There's, the government's known this for some time. And here's this firsthand account of this man telling me how he doesn't grow tumors anymore ever since he started this program in the 80s. And so if you think of, there's only two left, because of course with AIDS, cannabis didn't help with that, but the patient with MS is still alive too. I forget where she is, but I think she's in the Midwest. And then Irvin's out in Florida. So that was a huge aha moment for me. And then I was asked to, it was March of 2012. I play music. I play the violin, and my husband plays the guitar. And we had a band at the time. And we were asked to participate in a benefit concert to help with one of the first medical marijuana patients that got tested positive on his drug test and got let go. By the city. And so we were raising money for his legal team. Okay. And that's where those two were like the big moments where I was like, I want to just keep doing this. How do I keep doing this? And little by little, I one, as far as tips of getting involved in the cannabis industry, like go and seek out, the community, like go seek out if there's any events. That's an easy way of kind of just getting into it is, and doing some research if there's any nonprofit groups and, like a normal in your, respective city or, people that are out there kind of with this I feel like we're all on this tip that like this plant has been misunderstood, and it's a healing plant. And so, by being involved with events in the community, you're able to kind of, just get more involved, and finding your tribe and finding how you fit in this amazing industry. And I will add that there's room for you. There's room for people to bring their skills that want to really make a difference. Like if you're coming in the industry just trying to make a quick buck, I'll say, move on. But if you're here to kind of just really create quality products, if you care, if you've got your own story, your intention to kind of really make a difference with hemp, with cannabis, with the medicinal side, with patients, I mean, there is room for you.
Yeah, I love that. I feel that. The community has been so great to me, and I've just started. You kind of have to just go for it.
It was through really events that I was able to kind of, one, see community, and see also just breaking all the stereotypes, like seeing around me that you've got, the young person with the old person and all these different people. And we're all partaking in a really like safe, comfortable place, and we're all consuming cannabis. It was very eye-opening for me to kind of see the community that it brought together, and everyone had a great time.
And that is something that's just so surprising as I attend all these events that I'm getting into. It's just like, these are peaceful people, and what we have in common is this connection to cannabis, whatever that is. And it's just so diverse. Very cool. To rewind again. So you had no inhibitions about being a medical patient? Were you like hearing about this? You're like, I'm there. Did someone have to convince you? What was that path like?
So for me, I was definitely much there. I, had done my own research. I, was experiencing pain from actually a snowboarding accident. And I just wanted to try something different. And I also, very early on wanted to support the industry. And I was, looking to, get involved and to definitely, research it on my own by going to, get a recommendation, seeing what this process is like. Because eventually I feel like this was a new kind of trajectory for healthcare. This was a new way of people kind of taking back their lives using a plant-based medicine. And what really did it for me, where I, came out more out of the closet, those are my personal decisions in, pursuing a medical marijuana card really on, very early on when it was available. But also it took some time to, before I told other people, hey, why don't you do the same thing? So for me, it was just a pathway and just being someone who's always appreciated the plant. I mean, in college, I wrote papers why it should be, like in college, I wrote a paper and it was why, it should be legal. And I just, through the stories and seeing firsthand, people and recognizing that this plant had so many therapeutic benefits, for me as a personal choice, I was like, why not? Then I could support the community here in Denver, get a firsthand feel of it. And then it was really when Sanjay Gupta, it's funny, I've heard this in lectures before. There's like the pre-Sanjay Gupta era and then the post. And Sanjay Gupta, again, for those of you that don't know, he was the CNN medical director and he was very much against cannabis. And then he came out probably, 2012, he came out with, Charlotte Figge, Charlotte's Web. This plant is helping, children with epilepsy. And he came out and it said he was wrong about cannabis. And he provided these, these really story-like videos explaining things like the endocannabinoid system, explaining how, what this actually does to the body, how our body produces, byproducts of cannabinoids, like anandamide. And he was able to kind of really shake up, and be out there on CNN talking about this. So it was really around that time where in 2012, I was able to, one of my best friends, she lives in Florida. She's is a dear friend of mine. And she, in her mid-30s, my friend was very athletic. She played for the University of Miami soccer. She all of a sudden got diagnosed with lupus, and it was a rare form of lupus where now she was having seizures. And it really took some time, but I sent her all the Sanjay Gupta videos. And I said, hey, if this is helping children with epilepsy and you're having seizures now, multiple seizures a day, probably in like the 20s, 20 something seizures a day. And after being completely healthy, like on her way to like Olympic sports and this something, I like sent her all these videos and I asked her to come visit me in Colorado where we can, try some of this stuff, just being a friend and just being, like if it's helping people, let's give it a shot. And she was telling me too, at the time she was on really hard medications like Keppra and, where now there was something that her liver, her kidneys were failing. She almost got jaundice and because of it, and her neurologist and her, lupus doctor weren't really talking. So she, it was just this big mess. And after coming to Colorado and really, it was really I'll never forget, a Mile High Mountain Sucker lollipop, a high CBD lollipop where she was able to go one day with only having maybe 2 to 5 seizures. It dramatically decreased our number of seizures on that day. And that I think was a huge turning point for me of like being an advocate, being much more vocal, seeing it firsthand, like, and also understanding that I do have the power to help educate people who, have been so many. I mean, if you look at 80 years of propaganda, we've been told for so long that there's been no medicinal benefits. This is, as dangerous as heroin, which I honestly believe is the biggest lie of our lifetime. Sure. It's a travesty of what what this plant has, the rap that this plant has gotten, for all this misinformation. And so, then I was able to kind of take my friend who was so conservative. We actually had one falling out where she said to me that my life, my husband was like in kind of the weed industry, if you will, being, having clients that advertise, and then me being like a proponent, like talking to more people about it and doing my own research. She once said to me, your life revolves around weed. And she was like, people are concerned, gave me this whole lecture. And then we didn't talk. And then I found out she had seizures. And then, here I am mending the relationship, sending her the information. And then now turning the mindset of someone who used to be so misinformed and so, baked into propaganda, to have her come around. And now she is completely off her medications and she uses cannabis, is amazing to me. So I thought like, wow, that's just like one person I can help, save and educate and like provide a better quality of life. Like I was definitely, I saw this as a opportunity. Yeah. Like this is what I want to do. So I've kind of made it my like life's work to kind of educate and, advocate for the plan, and then definitely tie in social responsibility. There's still people being locked up, brown and black people, minorities that are still being locked up for this plan. And, that is something that's really important to me, that we talk about social justice, and that more states that are coming on to legalize actually bake in those programs where they're doing social justice reparations, and they're like, expunging or record sealing cannabis offenses. And anyone that's serving lifetime, there's still people serving lifetime, parole sentences for this plant. And I think, we need to really work on that. That's absolutely mind-boggling to me. So yeah, that's a little bit of, how I got started. It was a series of events and experiences, really seeing firsthand. And let's not forget the economic growth that cannabis brings. Like I saw that right away. Like if you even just look at the media here in Denver, Westward newspaper, around the same time, Rocky Mountain newspaper, one of the biggest newspapers in Denver, was folding. They were like dissolving. And then you have Westward, who, unlike the Denver Post in the very beginning, accepted cash from the cannabis, industry, and it provided them a platform to come and advertise, to be, treat them just like everyone else. And then, you see like Westward today is thriving, completely ran on its advertising. And now more and more media publications. Now there's publications that cater to the cannabis industry. But back in 2010, this is a big frontier, and people, and there was a lot of like, don't do that. This is just going to go away. And now here we are. So
yeah, it's the green rush, they're saying. And it's like, everything that you just put together is more evidence of how this plant can connect and unify us in such unique ways, between you and your friend and between industries, and really helping move forward and grow, move forward and heal in more ways than one.
I'd also like to kind of talk about just my experience too of like working in it, because that's me as just like being in it, but it wasn't really until 2015 I started working in the cannabis industry, and what that kind of opened some eyes. You know, my background originally is marketing, advertising. I also used to work for Cigna Healthcare.
Okay.
So I was part of the, health insurance industry, and I worked there for almost maybe 3.5 years doing marketing communications. And it was really around 2014, I realized, wow, like this little piece of paper, your insurance can define what type of health care you have, how you're treated at the ER, what medications you're allowed or not allowed to have, how much discounts. And for me, it really like turned on the lights of like the privatization and the corporatization of healthcare. And I didn't think that was very fair. Even at my time, I had some of my dearest friends tell me about how Cigna denied their claims, and they were now in such financial troubles. And like, I had a friend who straight up said, Mel, you're working for the devil, and I, my moral compass. And, again, as I think as young people and millennials, we really try to find what makes us passionate. We want to work for the companies that really like honor what we value inside. Gone are the days of like sticking with the same job for 10 years. I mean, if it's not working out for you,
goodbye.
I think our generation, we're going to go seek it, and then you think about how much time like you spend at work versus how much time you spend with your family. So for me, it was always a goal of like constantly trying to find what it is that I want to do. So here we are, 2014, Colorado votes to go recreational. And it was at that time I said, okay, I'm done with Cigna. I'm done with working for the man, if you will. And like, and I also just learning about like, the healthcare industry. It was quite a bit. And then I got involved with two cannabis first of all, I worked for an agency called, Cannabrand, and Brown originally is marketing, advertising. I also used to work for Cigna Healthcare.
Okay.
So I was part of the, health insurance industry, and I worked there for almost maybe 3.5 years doing marketing communications. And it was really around 2014, I realized, wow, like this little piece of paper, your insurance can define what type of health care you have, how you're treated at the ER, what medications you're allowed or not allowed to have, how much discounts. And for me, it really like turned on the lights of like the privatization and the corporatization of healthcare. And I didn't think that was very fair. Even at my time, I had some of my dearest friends tell me about how Cigna denied their claims, and they were now in such financial troubles. And like, I had a friend who straight up said, Mel, you're working for the devil, and I, my moral compass. And, again, as I think as young people and millennials, we really try to find what makes us passionate. We want to work for the companies that really like honor what we value inside. Gone are the days of like sticking with the same job for 10 years. I mean, if it's not working out for you,
goodbye.
I think our generation, we're going to go seek it, and then you think about how much time like you spend at work versus how much time you spend with your family. So for me, it was always a goal of like constantly trying to find what it is that I want to do. So here we are, 2014, Colorado votes to go recreational. And it was at that time I said, okay, I'm done with Cigna. I'm done with working for the man, if you will. And like, and I also just learning about like, the healthcare industry. It was quite a bit. And then I got involved with two cannabis first of all, I worked for an agency called, Cannabrand, and I was able to do some really great work that I was able to, take my advertising background and plop it in. And then it was though at that time, again, people asked like, people were wanting to work with us. and we were actually getting calls from Big Tobacco and some other
wow.
people. And I said, and then it came to that point again where I was like, I really don't know if I want to work with Big Tobacco and to get them into the cannabis industry. Like for me, I was very focused on the products and brands that create, this high quality products that I love people like, when they invest in research and they're out there educating, they're involved in the community. That's who I want to work with. So that then there at that point, after a year at, at this agency, I said, I just want to work for advocacy and nonprofit work. So then I worked for 2 cannabis research nonprofits. One, we did a monthly educational program where we did brain health in cannabis. We did pets in cannabis, and we really backed it with research, and we had research and a patient panel. So I did that consecutively for 9 months, and that provided great experience. And then soon after that, the Industrial Hemp Research Foundation called me, and they really wanted me to step in as a community engagement director. I would put on fundraising events. So that's where I also now, being kind of more of my focus on the medicinal side, now I was really getting amazing education about hemp, industrial hemp, and all the qualities of now full circle, more of this plant that I only just knew the medicinal sides for. And that was amazing. I learned that hemp was a soil remediator, that it pulls toxins out of the ground, and we were actually planting hemp in places where there were toxins from waste, and we were kind of watching the levels of toxins decrease with hemp being planted on these regions within Colorado. It was just so amazing, and understanding how it's been very effective for pain, sleep, and anxiety. And so and that kind of led me eventually to start my own chapter of a nonprofit, which brings us to Safe Access Colorado and Americans for Safe Access. And that's just, I started that October of this year.
Oh, wow. I didn't recognize
or last
that.
Year.
Okay. I was like, that's very recent.
Mm-hmm.
So I know one of the main things you're obviously very passionate about is keeping medical and recreational separate. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
I do believe there is therapeutic use of both. And I do believe it's medicinal all the way around because we have an endocannabinoid system. So when people say, let's regulate it just like alcohol, I kind of have an issue with that because we don't have an alcohol, system in our bodies that absorb alcohol and it does all these things. And, so for me, I'm always kind of I don't know about the whole regulate alcohol. More be regulate tomatoes, but that's just me because it is a plant. But I do believe so. Something that I kind of noticed here in Colorado is once we went recreational, the focus kind of has been on rec, and there has been this patient medical community where I feel it needs to be stronger. It needs to definitely have more people advocating for patients' rights. And I just really want to maintain our medical cannabis program here in Colorado. I think the fear is, if we look at Washington State and what they did in Washington, is that once recreational went legal, they got away with their medical program. And I think for us in Colorado, we don't want that to happen.
And so that's why you're doing so much lobbying. And I guess, there's such a push to legalize, but then it's the aftermath. What about the housing for the medical patients? What about the support? What about drug testing? Those are all efforts that you're supporting. What disparities are you seeing medical marijuana patients experience?
So what I'm seeing right now is one, we should, and I think every state should have this, we should have the right to grow our own. In some states you can't do that. And, we had a bill, it was called, I think, House Bill 1220 a couple years ago, where we we decreased the number of plants that people are allowed to grow. And so I think that's just something that is always going to be on the radar, is preserving the right to grow and preserving access, and that's kind of a goal for Americans for Safe Access. They really fight for access. And I was very impressed with them. I've heard about them, but it wasn't until, going to their annual conference I got a scholarship to attend the Unity conference. It's Americans for Safe Access's annual conference. And I was able to see, wow, this is my type of conference. Like, I've been to a lot of events, a lot of conferences, there's industry, where it's like all the growing, all the manufacturing equipment, all these salespeople. And then there's traded, like the National Cannabis Industry Association. There's all these, but I really believe Americans for Safe Access is the advocacy group, and they continue to fight for research. They continue to fight for access. And I think things like, drug testing, employees, like those are definitely some issues that we need to address here in Colorado. I also think that, for one, it took us in Colorado 10 years to add more qualifying conditions to the list. It took us 10 years to add PTSD. It actually had gone twice before, it failed twice. And it was like the third time, 10 years later, that we actually moved the needle. And, last year we were advocating for, other qualifying conditions. This year we have prescription of opioids. That is a bill right now, Senate Bill 13, that we're working on, and also autism, adding autism to the list of qualifying conditions. But honestly, where we're headed, I would love to see a bill next year. I might present this bill, but I would like to be more like California and Massachusetts and completely get rid of qualifying conditions. I think that if a doctor says you need medical cannabis for whatever reasons, and I really believe it's more of a quality of life issue, that, cannabis is known to improve the quality of life for a lot of Americans, that, if you want to speak to your doctor and they say, you have an issue or an ailment, that they can recommend medical cannabis for you. And so that's where I'd love to see us heading in the future. And then some other disparities, just, right now, Mayor Hancock, Denver's mayor, it has a program right now. It's called Turning a New Leaf. If you Google that, you can find out right now he's offering, I think, 5 more record sealing clinics. You can come and see if you qualify. Right now, they are addressing minor offenses. So I think in my ideal world, I would love to do major offenses. I think it's up to 1 ounce. Like, if you caught with 1 ounce, there's some people that have been caught with a few more ounces for whatever reason.
Right.
But now that we're legalized, it's like, what does it matter? Like, no one should be checking that box, when they apply for a job that says, have you been convicted of felony? And that box should not equal a cannabis offense, just now that we're fully legal. Like, so that's something that Colorado didn't really get right out the gate when we created our medical marijuana or our cannabis program or recreational program. But there's other states out there that are really putting that in right in the beginning, which I love. And that's just a learning lesson as this tide rolls.
I'm happy that you said that, because I just didn't really realize there's this push for legalization. You think everything's good, but to continue working, and even on the medical side, I know that we were just at lobby days for caregivers, for children to be able, like more than one parent, to be able to pick up the medication and handle the medication. So there's these little things, these little tweaks that we could always be improving. This is so new, and just figuring out the best way to handle all of it. Speaking of lobby days, that was also a surprise to me to see the doctors up there and just feeling this kind of intensity that I might want to testify or be a witness someday. So I think, would you recommend that would be one way that we could get involved as healthcare professionals?
Absolutely. No, there's especially our, new healthcare professionals that are open to this plant that we know we're not. I mean, if you think of, the knowledge gap among doctors, if you're a doctor, say you're a leading doctor, cardiologist or whatever, I mean, you've got a sweet job doing all these surgeries. Like, are you going to take the time to now go back and relearn about how this plant is unless you're really highly incentivized, I don't see most medical professionals, as busy as they are today, if you think of doctors and nurses and how busy our healthcare team is today, that they're going to go back and get educated. I think it really takes kind of a personal story or people coming out and groups like the Cannabis Nurses Network and all these other amazing groups out there like Americans for Safe Access to really get in touch with medical professionals. But I would love for you to come testify, just being that, your background, pharmacist background, pharmacology, to really kind of, come up there and testify. You won't even know. I mean, it's amazing to me how much people don't know that the power that you have. You have to remember that the people that we elect in office for us here locally and statewide do represent us. And an email and a phone call goes a huge way. I mean, they'll still talk about that. There's people that in rural Colorado, like if they have these issues, they'll bring up these patient stories or these constituents. So they'll talk about, their family and, their district and their needs. And so being that, really helping empower people to kind of take a stand and come testify, especially when you have, if you talk about like how a bill is made, there's a public testimony and a first hearing usually right in the beginning when the bill is introduced. And that is our public testimony. I mean, you might, they will have to listen to us and hear everyone. So that is an excellent time to come on out and get engaged and share your voice.
Speaking of bills and voting, Denver has some exciting issues coming up. Do you want to talk about that?
So right now, cannabis is still a federal Schedule I drug. We have 33 states, including DC, Guam, and Puerto Rico, that have a medical cannabis program. And so I think people are waking up to the fact that maybe the FDA and the government, the DEA, might not be, the best sounding board for all the truth, that we need to believe them 100%. If you're looking at even in the FDA world, Food and Drug Administration and all these, pharmaceuticals that have now caused our opioid epidemic, we are in our mid-30s. I'm in my mid-30s, and this is the number one epidemic of my time. I know countless friends and families all over the country that have fallen to addiction to opiates, have maybe, if not, even worse, they've lost a loved one to an accidental overdose, or within the families, there's struggles. And so if you look at that's the FDA, those are the drugs that are prescribed by our doctors. So I think now we have a new group of people, of consumers, of people that are really awake to, doing their own research, that maybe that doctor that said this prescription was free or that surgery was necessary isn't really, the first and only voice of reason when we evaluate and justify what we consume and put into our bodies. I think we're definitely a much more wiser community and demographic and age group. And so I think that, people are looking to take back their health. People are looking for other natural plant-based alternatives for therapeutic use. I think I for one, I refuse, I'm not very much into any pharmaceuticals right now or any opioids. And I look to plant-based therapeutics. So that in mind, I believe we're in this new culture kind of switch, and we're seeing the more acceptance. We're seeing how, the government has lied to us about cannabis, and how, people understand now there is the war on drugs. And we're really looking at, social justice in a new light, that, people have been, the same group of people have been persecuted time over time for, possession of drugs. And so now, back to your point, I really want to stress that Denver is we are going to be the first in the country to have a ballot initiative to vote on decriminalization of psilocybin mushrooms.
That's huge. What's your prospect on that? Who have you been talking to? How do you think it might lean? Or are you just happy to have this discussion in the open?
So I will be very forthcoming and tell you that I was one of the 6 original petitioners to petition the city of Denver. And so in October, I got a phone call, and it was from one of my dear friends who asked me if they needed a 6th person. I took some time. I mean, it took just a little bit of time to kind of evaluate, well, what does this mean? And so basically my information was on every petition that went out, and our goal was to get 5,000 signatures. And we definitely reached that requirement. We turned in over 5,000 signatures on February 1st, and I think it was January 7th. And then by February 1st, we heard from Denver City Council that we made the ballot. So we've reached the requirement. So now that's 12 weeks from now. The election, Denver voters, the election is May 7th. It's Tuesday. It's a mid-year election in May on a Tuesday. So, that's a little challenging of itself, is that it's not in November. It's not a major election day. So it's just educating voters coming out. And I think the challenge now is to really educate on what decriminalization of psilocybin mushrooms actually means. For a lot of you that may not know, psilocybin is a mushroom, and it's also psychoactive. It's been used thousands of years medicinally in other parts of the country. And just recently, Johns Hopkins University, and there's all this research doctors calling for the reclassification of psilocybin. Psilocybin right now, if you get caught with psilocybin mushrooms, it equals a felony. You can go to jail. You can become a felon. You can have your family taken away from you. You can, risk all of that. And so May 7th, what we're voting on in Denver is to decriminalize, which means no one goes to jail for possession or use of psilocybin mushrooms. And we are the first people in the country to have any psychedelic, involved within, decriminalization, legalization, that's ever been talked about. So ours is very specifically decriminalization. I think in Oregon, they're looking to legalize statewide, and that's a 2020. That's a 2020 initiative. And so people, I think, are thinking we're trying to legalize when we just, for the record, we are not looking to do that. This is a decriminalization initiative only. We are looking to take one step in ending the war on drugs, being that nobody goes to jail for mushrooms. So it is really exciting. I think that there's a lot of people, surprisingly so, that are very accepting of this. I think we all kind of know a little bit more about the war on drugs. And if you look at this mushroom that's growing, that grows naturally, it's kind of ridiculous to think that people are going to jail for plant-based medicines or plants in general. So I think we have a shot. If we can just keep away from, the fear that we're going to start popping up stores and like having this. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. Different situation for sure than cannabis, but to begin freeing the people is one giant step. So
one giant step. And then I think too, for, psychedelics in general, like there's more research that are coming out that, psychedelics and things, is helping people. There's definitely right now someone in Boulder, Colorado, who's using psilocybin medicinally because it's this whole like Colorado right to try, like for people that are chronically ill, that are experiencing, they're going to die, that this one guy says his medical team is all on board because they're just seeing that it's helping so much. So, again, if you're in Denver and you're listening, May 7th is a big time to be part of history and to come out. And it's really, we are demonstrating our democratic process. We're leaving it to the voters to decide. And then up until now, through then, I plan to, on my Facebook page on Influential X, I'll be hosting a Wisdom Wednesdays, which we're going to talk about psilocybin. Because I think that people need to be educated on what this is and what this isn't, this campaign, and what this actually means if it goes into effect. And what, I would just love to create, again, like you are, a platform for people to, learn and to be more informed so that we can make those educated decisions.
Yes, definitely. What are you up to? What is ASA up to? What are you working on?
For Americans for Safe Access, for the Colorado chapter, we are really knee-deep in our legislative session. We have a number of bills that we're following. Right now, there is a bill, and we'll see. So this is very important. So House Bill 1076 would add vaping to the Indoor Clean Air Act. And that is something that I am, and my group is very much opposed to having. We don't want vaping to be added to the Indoor Clean Air Act. I feel that it's because, you know what, it's so funny. You know, in the beginning, they were saying that they don't want kids vaping. And apparently Colorado has a huge issue with kids vaping, and vaping these e-cigarettes, these, you know, things.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm with them on that. I don't believe kids should be, you know, getting a hold of vape pens or, you know, or Juuls or whatever they're called, e-cigarettes, you know. So I'm very much against that. But then, you know, what this does is it kind of criminalizes vaping. And, you know, if you look at even the cannabis industry as a whole, concentrates make a huge of what cannabis consumers and patients are buying. People like to vape. Yeah, people like to vape. People like to dab to help mitigate their pain. Mm-hmm. For epilepsy, they use, you know, you can use, my friend says that she feels a seizure is coming on. She can hit her vape pen and just, you know, wait and see how that feels. And so now you want to take something that has been known to be a better alternative to smoking, you know, and I believe that there's plenty of research that shows that vaping is actually safer from actual combustible, you know, smoke combustion. And now you want to criminalize people that are vaping. So if you think of federal housing, people that rent and don't own their houses, if you think of like, you know, people getting fined now for vaping, I personally think that it's an infringement on, you know, a quality of life that we have right now. We can vape, and, you know, we can vape where we want to, indoor, inside, and there's actually, you know, and so now I feel like this is just one thing that they're trying to get rid of, and that definitely affects patients. And I think it's if you look at what the Indoor Clean Air Act did years ago, it came through Colorado, you know, and other states kind of followed suit where smoking was banned inside. And I think for the most part, that is a good thing. But if we do the same thing to vaping, this can actually go kind of further. And now you have people, you know, being criminalized for taking what we think is, you know, a more healthier approach to, you know, smoking and consuming cannabis. And so I just think it's just something that's unnecessary. And it could definitely criminalize cannabis patients and make it harder for us.
Is there anything involved in that bill about the health of the people around them? What are the main concerns?
Their main concerns is that, so at first it was supposed to be like what we heard, this is just the ring around we're getting, that this was actually to keep kids from e-cigarettes and nicotine. And then we heard just yesterday at the Capitol that this was to ban vaping in public, completely ban it. So as far as their concerns, in the bill itself, they state this research study, which was that I think that you can, the bill sponsor actually said to me in a meeting that, you know, it leaves toxic chemicals in the air, vaping does. And I don't, you know, and I think when you look at that study, the study was done where somebody vaped and it was in a very small contained environment. It wasn't like at the park or at, you know, someone's house to see if there was, you know, residuals or anything like that.
So we're not talking at like a restaurant. We're talking in your home or apartment building or...
No, I think in a restaurant too. I think they just want to ban vaping in public in general, anywhere.
Okay.
So I think it's saying that vaping is now equal to smoking, and now you have to be in the same area to do both. And I think that's an infringement on our you know, on a human right that we have right now, is that we can vape. And I hope that people listening to this, like people that do vape, are conscientious of the people around them. Like, I'm not vaping in someone's face and like there's a family of kids. I'll even like step away just because, like, you know, I just don't want, I'm just courteous. Like, right. So I just hope that like more consumers kind of follow that route. I don't know if they do, Sure. I definitely am not one of those that like will vape on an airplane. And that's where I think we just need to be, I for sure don't think it should equal, criminalization and fees. And I really do think about all the patients and people that rely on vaping and dabbing in their homes or federal housing to help with their ailments or to control their pain or their epilepsy, whatever it may be. And so I just think it goes too far. And if you look at the bill, it's very broad. So we're asking for a cannabis exemption, though the bill sponsor said no to that. But now this hearing has been rescheduled now for the third time. So next Wednesday, which is the 27th at 1:30, this bill is going to be read at the Capitol. So we're actually hosting another lobby day. You can find it on Coloradans for Safe Access Facebook page or Colorado Normal. And get more information there to come on out and share your voice.
What else would you like to share with our audience?
I think that one, we can't talk about the endocannabinoid system enough. More and more people need to kind of like do that and educate yourselves on that. Some resources that I'd love to share with you is Americans for Safe Access. You go to safeaccessnow.com. It's an amazing resource for medical professionals, for legal, for citizens. So say, for example, you ever get faced with someone raiding your home, there's actually steps in there to kind of talk about your protections and what you can do if you're ever faced with that horrible situation. If you're a medical doctor looking for, research and resources, it's also a great website. Again, it's just an amazing organization to get behind. And that was huge for me. I mean, I am in, Colorado, and, it was last year, and Hickenlooper vetoed the autism bill, meaning that we took the autism bill last year and it won, I think, 85% of the vote in the House and in the Senate, and then got vetoed at the very last moment. And that's where it really dawned on me. I was like, wow, we need a stronger medical community. We need, and there was a time at the Capitol where he was deciding on his very last day, and I was there with all the families and moms and kids with autism. And he had asked that he needed to hear from more doctors. Like he was just hearing from the same people, the hospitals, whatever, that they didn't want this. And I took that moment to like go through my network and call and text and email everyone that I knew. I probably got 4 doctors to come to, give a call or send an email. And that's where I said, wow, we really need to like tap into some amazing groups like Cannabis Clinicians of Colorado, and really kind of build the medical professional database. So I was very thrilled when I met you, Tori, and, learned that you were, your background and how you were, pharmacology, and you were, very interested in cannabis and looking to get involved. I was like, yes, the more medical professionals, the people that have this knowledge that, I can unite, or like we can, take action together at the Capitol, like the better we are for our community, for the future of this industry, and for also making sure that there's a voice for, people that use this medicinally. And so I would say if you're a medical professional out there, and if you're a nurse, there's Cannabis Nurses Network. They're having an annual conference at the end of this month. It's amazing in San Diego. There's Cannabis Nurses Magazine, Canna Health. There's just so many things out there for you to kind of increase your knowledge and to find a community of like-minded people.
And just like you did with your friend, and I'm trying to do, and Sanjay, it's just like if someone you respect comes out of the canna closet, it gives you this little bit of permission to say, like, me too, I'm cool with this too. So yeah, let's keep it up. Let's keep it in a positive light, and let's unite.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit going on. And again, thanks for the opportunity of having me on the show or having me on the podcast. And really looking forward to what we can do together, in addressing the medical community, or just, sharing information or anything I can do to help. And you can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Melanie Rose. I'm on Facebook too. Influential X is my business arm. You can go to Coloradans for Safe Access.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this information and being a patient advocate and using your voice.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Cannabis, the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and give a 5-star rating. You can find more information about mindfulness and what I do at tidytour.com. Follow the Cannabis over to Instagram and connect with me through direct message anytime. Big love.